Good morning, this is Patty, and it is June, I don't know, I think it's the 19th. I'm sitting on the stoop at Ancient Spirals, and I'm looking at the sun. And I've had a week that's been a mix of colonized thinking and wild thinking with the bank and a lawyer and my friend Verna, who is First Nations from Yellow Quill, and my friend Esther, who is the owner of Ancient Spirals and a physician psychotherapist in Saskatoon. And I myself am a former businesswoman, I guess you'd say. I did have my own business near the end, consulting firm services for events and communications and organizational, I guess people call it organizational development. I think I was, and I called it that then too, but I think really more what was really going on is that I was about organizational integrity. And also prior to that, I acted as the general manager for the Saskatchewan Jazz Festival and executive officer for the Saskatoon Home Builders Association, and as a event and program developer with the Saskatoon and District Industry Education Council. Over the years, I worked for many clients in the arts and humanities and with youth. And I dropped out of that phase of my life in 2008 because I was getting really sick. And I could no longer answer the question of why I would do what I did because it was all feeling incredibly shallow. So Verna and I and Esther and another woman, Patricia, have been gathering together approximately weekly for the past well, I think it's been about a year or better with the four of us, and prior to that it was Esther and Patricia and I, and prior to that it was Esther and I, and all along the way we have also at times interacted with the community. We were undertaking what we considered to be a community healing initiative. Because we're all colonized, we thought it was going to be something different than it is, will be, and I feel like now it's evolving into something that is an expression of the values and the work that we knew needed to be taken on, but it now has the benefit of several years of experience of facing the challenges of reconciling colonial think and natural think. And so colonial think and natural think is what I feel compelled to speak about this morning. Just talk about how I see that. So, colonial think. Colony is the root word there. We colonize when we create communities that are tied together by a set of values and rules. And the colonies that we've been living in were the ideas of others, not us. We inherited them when we were born. We were born into colonial think. And colonial think is very good at making sure that all of the children who are born on Earth are entwined in it. You might also call it imperial think. The think begins with some certain folks thinking that they are somehow more special than other people and that they have a divinely endowed right to rule. Think of the divine right of kings thinking. So if we look at Canada objectively and not emotionally, Canada was founded by the British Empire as a colony, and with the reason being to create a grid and populate it with people who would continue with the empire's objectives and work for the empire. And they were brilliant in their tactics for creating the conditions that make people think that what they're doing is virtuous and the way life is. The queen, right now we have a queen, of course. It's often been a king. This is, I think, the first queen that the British Empire has had, I believe. You know, how you can tell for sure that your country is not your own is what oath politicians take when they take office. And indeed, maybe even just the mere presence of politicians itself is your evidence of colonial think, because that creates a layer that is able to steer the creativity and resources of a certain land and its people and the living things upon it for the gain of those kings and queens. And so in Canada, when you are elected to an office at any level of government, municipal, provincial, or federal, the oath you take when you enter office is you pledge your allegiance to the Queen as the sovereign. So there's a good kickstart point to natural think, which I would say is actually natural law. And that is that no one person is the sovereign, everyone is sovereign, and no one has any right to take from you what is yours, to take your power, to take your resources, to take your creativity. This means taxation. This means your mind. This means everything. So when we're born into the colony is very good at inundating us with its beliefs and has been working on building that over many generations. And so our parents are colonial thinkers, and they willingly send us off to school to be indoctrinated by the colonial think. Now, of course, they're using us to do the work, and so they're able to cloak this and get us so enmeshed in this belief system that we go out and do their work, stealing souls, and we consider it to be virtuous. So let's take a teacher, for example. A teacher is a human being who typically, if they're drawn to education, who loves children and the development of children. But because they have been born into and trained by the colonial thinking, they go into teaching and then perpetuate the colonial thought and embed it in the next generations. And the sooner you send your children to school, because we are not objective in the first 7 years of our life, we have no ability to discern, really. The earlier you send a child to school, the more assured you are of embedding colonial think in them, so that they will then perpetuate it rather than save themselves and those around them. So why can I see through this when many can't? I'm not the only one who can see through this. There's more and more of us every day. But, I guess so, and not to make this personal really, but to make it situational. Some of us seem to have a higher immunity to being colonized, and I'm in that camp. I was born in the 60s, and it was a whole different world than it is now, and there was a lot more freedom. And when I was born, we had radios, but televisions were not very common. They were here, but they weren't very common, and the programming was shit. I lived in small towns. I was always very close to nature, so I had nature's medicine at my feet all the time. I didn't have access to movie theaters and telephones and televisions and video games and all of these things that pull us away. I was left to be a child of the community and of nature. And my parents grew up on farms, and so they too were close to nature. And they were very community-minded, so they served well at the level of community. But and they were colonized too, but they retained more of their natural ways. And my grandparents were very simple people. Neither family had much, either side, dads or mums, and we weren't that far out from the generations in Europe, Scotland, Norway, and Sweden, who had left those countries and came here because they were naive and they didn't know this country belonged to somebody. This was somebody else's home. And because they wanted to be set free from the indebted servitude kind of slavery that was their reality and the harsh, the harsh living conditions that were their reality back in the old country. What the colony does, the colony's means of capturing people is genocide. So they crush cultures, and they always have. And though there are people who could speak about this far more intelligently than I, the Christianity, organized religion, organized Christianity is also part of this scheme. And I believe it's probably a true statement that the Vatican is actually over the monarchy. So there's another sneaky trick where priests are actually behind the monarchy, and the monarchy is a bit of a front for priests who are really black magic practitioners and Satanists. And I know this is going to be really appalling and inflammatory for some people, and I get that, and I'm sorry. A black magic, in contrast to white magic. White magic is generative and benevolent. Black magic is degenerative and non-benevolent. Black magic is about power over, taking power from. White magic is about using your power to create something bright and good. So we're sitting here in this world that we're in today. I'm going to bring this to Canada and couch this in Canadian terms. As a Canadian. So I'm feeling like, well, as a North American maybe, but who lives in Canada with a bit of a Canadian focus. But I don't want to leave out some thoughts about the U.S. Because we're all in a similar boat, but the semantics, the veil, the mask that's been put up makes us look different. Americans believe in life, liberty, and happiness, apparently, right? And the ordinary person certainly does, but that's not what the systems are designed to create. The systems are designed to create division between blue and red, between compassion and liberty, self-reliance, instead of knowing that these things are complementary features to a healthy society. The two-party system pits people against each other, and neither side is right or whole or healthy. Okay, so back to Canada. This is an election year. And in Canada, we have a multi-party system. So we have, to name them, we have the Liberals, who are presently have the majority and are governing. leading the governance. And you know what, I'm going to take away the word lead, and I'm going to say managing, because I also want to talk about the difference between leadership and control or management. We have the Conservatives. We have the NDP, the New Democratic Party, which was formerly, I believe, the Social Credit Party. And we have the Green Party. Recently, we have the emergence of the Canadian People's Party, something of that nature, Maxime Bernier. And I should state that I like to speak to the essence of things and to the headlines and not get embroiled in the lingo and the issues so much, but scale it back to morality, ethics, wisdom, care, compassion, logic, humble altruism. All people included. The whole person included. You know, what these parties serve to do is fragment us as individuals, because a conservative mindset, Republican is what the party goes by in the States, tends to value liberty, personal rights and freedoms, at least on the surface. And a more liberal or social party tends to value the village more, and compassion and the person from a heart space. You know, you hear the I've heard the term growing up lots, bleeding heart liberal, because because the human heart is on the sleeve. Neither system is a directly democratic system that values the human beings in it, and values the human beings and encourages human beings to value their natural way of being and thinking. And in that natural way of being and thinking, we have something called sovereignty, which means I don't have any power over you. I don't have the right to be a predator on your power, and nor you me. It's a relationship of mutual respect, and it's a claiming of our birthrights to be healthy and free on this plane. And in claiming our birthrights to be healthy and free, we also have to live our responsibility to keep this place healthy and free. Now, when I was growing up, "Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all our sons command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, our true north strong and free. Oh, Canada, I stand on guard for thee. Oh, Canada, glorious and free. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee." I don't even know if I got those words right, because it's been so long since I've been able to sing that song that I was forced to sing every freaking morning at school to indoctrinate me, the same as I was forced to say the Lord's Prayer. First of all, everybody in the world is my brother and sister. Second of all, I answer to no Lord. I have a relationship with creation. I am a human being. And I'm a woman. And my natural role in this world is to nurture and protect children, to shield children from predators, to be part of making sure that children have a proper welcoming and a good community to hold them and grow them into healthy, sovereign, responsible adults who won't be slaves to the power structures of the world. I do believe we have an election later this year coming up. And I ceased to be a voter a couple of years ago. I recognized for myself that by voting in this system, I vote for this system, and I will not do that. Now, people tell me if I don't vote, I don't have a right to complain, and I think that is flawed colonial thinking. If I don't act on the side of life, I don't have a right to complain. And acting on the side of life, by my discernment, does not include voting in this system. So why do I want to get these thoughts out there? Is because I want to inspire natural think. I want to comfort those who are thinking this way as well and say, you're not alone, and I'm willing to step up here beside you and walk with you to recover human health, sovereignty, freedom, vitality, and to make communities that work. So I want to inspire and encourage us to share what's really going on for us. Share how we feel. Step away from issues like climate change, for example, and the wall, and all of this drama that is laid out before us to keep us divided. Most of it's not true. And most of it is new programs being embedded into our consciousness to perpetuate the divisiveness. What we need to do is care for life on the planet. I don't know what's true for sure, but just to use climate change as an example, I've borne witness to what seems to be trustworthy evidence that climate change is a false flag created from the imaginations of the members of the Club of Rome, and that weather modification, if you look up at the sky, you'll see the evidence on any given day. The fake clouds, all of the trails that are left by airplanes with toxic chemicals that are poisoning the earth and then can be manipulated to create fires and storms and a number of other things. So what the people who pick up the climate change cause are doing, by my observation, is being taken in, having their naturally erupting love for life in the world co-opted by the tricksters. And you can tell because the tricksters fund a lot of things that keep the fight going. Now, I don't want this to be political. I want this to be truth-based, and so, I hope I'm not riling up people who are in that space too much. What I want to say to those people who are is that I am so grateful that people who care are being born in huge numbers. People who are prepared to do the work of waking up. People who are prepared to do the work of clarifying their mind from the colonial way of thinking and the colonial way of creating smoke screens and diversions to keep us from ourselves, keep us from our power, keep us from living together in harmony. Vernon and I talked yesterday about convening a council of wise women to begin to lead us home. And one of the ideas for that council that I have, well, a couple of the ideas is one is that community is big, and community engagement and wise ways of being together, and so we can do this, heal our minds and heal our hearts and heal our souls and recover and reclaim our power and create the world we all need and want, is to maybe see if we can collaborate to create a platform for sovereignty that we then share with Canada ahead of this election and change the conversation and hopefully come out the other side with an outcome of direct democracy. I'm not quite sure what the technicalities are going to have to be, but I know that there are people who have a pretty good idea of how we use the system to transform the system. But it's got to be clever. You've got to be awake to do it. And hence the Council of Wise Women, a group of women who are clear thinkers, gifted. I guess, the reward for doing this is that the feminine is appreciated and welcomed and put to use, because the capacity for love that is the feminine within us and that women can lead with. And by lead, I mean lead. I don't mean manage. Leadership cares for all beings. Management manipulates, controls. Now, if you're managing a process that follows great leaders, well, that's one thing. But if you're calling management and control leadership, that's colonial think. Colonial thinkers, one of the symptoms of the colonial thinking is that we become rescuers, and if we have material abundance, which the colony promotes as being successful, you don't want to lose your material abundance, because to do so makes you feel like you live in poverty. But the natural abundance and the soul abundance that has been leaching out of us in this thought is far more, it's healthy, and it's pleasurable, and it values who you are and your gifts, and it teaches you to be self-sustainable. It's a beautiful thing. More beautiful than I can imagine. I just feel the essence of it, because, as committed as I am towards that, I'm still on the road, and it's not easy. All right, well, I'm going to sign off and tell you that I'm looking at the sun. Unfortunately, I'm looking at the sun through a haze of chemical spew. But I am still looking at the sun, and I'm taking the sun in my eyes, and my doggy's here by my side, and the birds are chirping, as I'm sure you've heard, and a lot of things are wrong in the world, and yet still it's a beautiful day. So I love you. I hope to see you on the way. I'd like to hear back from you. Thank you. I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me for the errors that I've made. And that's Colonial from Hawaii. And I have faith in you. I'm proud of you. I trust you.